Wet your hands with water. Apply soap, rub your hands palm to palm, and wash the backs of both hands and in between your fingers. Then palm to palm with fingers interlocked. Clasp your hands together and rub. And then clean around the thumbs too. Rub your fingertips in the palms of your hands and finish off with the wrists. Rinse your hands really well with water and dry them thoroughly with a paper towel. Use the towel to turn off the tap. Your hands are now clean.
Good morning, students. The school is Azizi. Today we're going to start a quite interesting chapter as Mother's Day. It's actually a play, drama. It's written by J.B. Priestley. The writer tells how a mother does effort to make all the family members happy, but all her efforts are ignored by them. It also tells how the family members who work 8-hour shifts a day look upon her, although she works for the whole day and all week. After all she does for them, they take her for granted. They think that she has to do all whatever she was doing. They make her feel obliged to provide for them and do not even appreciate her efforts. This play revolves around how her friend, Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is a fortune teller, I hope you understand the fortune teller, a person who tells about future, looking at especially on cards, and she helps her earn the place and respect she deserves as the woman of the house. Let me introduce here the main characters of this play. Mrs. Annie Pearson, she is the one who we talking about, the mother. George Pearson, who's husband of Mrs. Annie Pearson. Doris Pearson, she is daughter of Mrs. and Mr. Pearson. Cyril Pearson, his son. And if you can see this different name, which is Mrs. Fitzgerald, she is the fortune teller I mentioned earlier. So, like I said, it's a drama, a play. So, the action basically takes place in the living room of the Pearson's house in London suburb, and time is the present. Living room is the area, I'm sure you know this word, what kind of room we talking about, where all the family members can sit together. So that's basically visiting area. And the place is Pearson's house, means the Pearson family's house in London city, which is capital of England. So now the writer is describing about this scene. So the scene is of the living room of the Pearson family, and the time is afternoon. It is comfortably furnished. Comfortably furnished means whatever the things are should be required in a house, it's all there. Much lived in room. Much lived in room means the house, the room is been used, means people are living there. That's all meant here. Means it's not like that people are coming in that house sometimes only. So it's not like that. So people live in there all the time. There's somebody in that house, in that room. And a small suburban semi-detached villa. Villa is a type of house. Basically, you must have seen in pictures or movies that the houses, especially in English country, in England, they are called Victorian house, and it is semi-detached. Means mostly, like I was saying, that the houses in England, they are attached. Most of the houses are attached with each other. Means one house and then another house attached with that. So those kind of houses are there, but this one is semi-detached. In some portions of that house is attached with another house, and the area is suburban. Suburban is outskirt of a city. That outskirt means like suppose if the main city is the central, the place, yeah, it's like we saying that central London, but this house is not in central London, it's outskirt of the city. So just about the like outside of the city. So that area is called suburban. If necessary, only one door need be used, but it is better with two. One up left leading to the front door and the stairs, and the other in the right wall leading to the kitchen and the back door. So these are the description of that living room. There can be a muslin covered window in the left wall and possibly one in the right wall too. Muslin covered. Muslin is basically is a fabric, thin cotton fabric that can be used like a curtain. So the window can be covered with the muslin fabric in the left wall and possibly one in the right wall too. So that muslin covered window could be the left side on the left wall as well as on the right wall. The fireplace is assumed to be in the fourth wall. The fireplace is assumed. Why it's saying assumed? Because, okay, let me tell you one more thing. When you are doing a play, you must have done several plays or drama in your school. So you have a stage, yeah? You have like plays which is decorated or made like whatever the scene it has to be. So because this scene is of a house, especially the living room, so it's describing how it could be made. So like the writer says that one muslin covered window on the left wall, another muslin covered window on the right wall, and the fireplace is assumed. Assumed means you can think that the fireplace is the place where you put fire to make the house or room warm. Okay, so these days in those places like England, they've got electric fireplace, but in old days, in ancient time, there used to be a fireplace where you could burn woods, a coil to make the house warm. And it's assumed. Why it's saying assumed? Because even if you are showing a scene of a room, you cannot cover from all the four sides. Yeah. So like you are showing a room, so there could be only three walls. The fourth wall is to be seen by the pupil. So this is what the writer is trying to say. The fireplace is assumed to be in the fourth wall, means the place, the wall where the stage is, where in front of that wall the people are sitting and watching that play. There is a settee upright, an armchair down left and one down right. Settee is like furniture. So one thing like just like one, like a piece of furniture is called settee in England, in English I would say. And armchair down left and one down right. A small table with two chairs on either side of it stands at the center. When the curtain rises, it is an afternoon in early autumn. Early autumn, autumn is a season, and the stage can be well lit. So why this autumn season is mentioned here? Because in England, especially in autumn, the weather is really nice. So the stage can be well lit. Mrs. Pearson at night and Mrs. Fitzgerald at left are sitting opposite each other at the small table. So now the scene I hope you understood that is a scene of the living room, and these two women, Mrs. Pearson at the right side and Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is fortune teller, and she is sitting at the left side. So they are just like opposite to each other on a small table, on which are two teacups and saucers and the cards with which Mrs. Fitzgerald has been telling Mrs. Pearson's fortune. Mrs. Pearson is a pleasant but worried looking woman in her 40s. In her 40s? So she is between 40 to 49 years old. So that's the like period is called 40s. So if she would be between 50 to 59, so you can call in her 50s. So here it is 40s. So she was between 40 to 49 somewhere. And the writer is described the woman, Mrs. Pearson's personality, like behavior and things. So she was pleasant. Her personality was pleasant, but worried looking woman. Worried looking woman means was thinking too much. She was worried too much for something. And Mrs. Fitzgerald is older. So she is older than Mrs. Pearson. Heavier and strong and sinister. Sinister means a person who has bad habits kind of thing. For example, smoking, drinking, abusing. So those kind of quality, in fact, I would say that the quality, so disqualities the person having is called sinister. So Mrs. Fitzgerald is having a sinister personality. She is smoking. So now the example is in front of you. So the time when these two women were sitting, so Mrs. Fitzgerald was smoking at that time. It is very important that these two should have sharply contrasting voices. Mrs. Pearson is speaking in light, flurried sort of tone with a touch of suburban cockney, perhaps. And Mrs. Fitzgerald with a deep voice, rather Irish, perhaps. So now here the word suburban, I've explained you what does it mean, and there is another word, cockney. So the people living in East London, they are called cockney. And Mrs. Fitzgerald is having deep voice, means she is kind of like with effective voice or sounding loud, deep, and rather Irish, perhaps. Irish people living in or belong to Ireland are called Irish. So the both have got different personality and even different in way of talking. So now the conversation starts between these two women. So first, Mrs. Fitzgerald starts talking, and while she is talking, she is collecting up the cards which was lying on the table, and what the cards are, the cards where the fortune teller reads something and tells the fortune, the future. So what does she say here? And that's all I can tell you, Mrs. Pearson. Could be a good fortune, could be a bad one. All depends on yourself now. Make up your mind, and there it is. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald starts telling Mrs. Pearson that's all she could tell about her good fortune. And it could be bad one also. So it all depended on Mrs. Pearson. She had to make up her mind. Now, Mrs. Pearson says, yes, thank you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. I'm much obliged. I'm sure it is wonderful having a real fortune teller living next door. Did you learn the out east too? So, Mrs. Pearson now saying that she is much obliged, and she is sure about whatever Mrs. Fitzgerald tells her, and she is happy to have a real fortune teller living next door. What does it mean next door? Means if somebody is living in another house, just next to the house. So that's called in in England, most of the people use this word next door. Next door means next house. And she asked one question, did you learn that out east too? So she was inquiring about if she had learned this art of fortune telling from the East. Mrs. Fitzgerald, I did, 12 years ahead of it, with my old man rising to be lieutenant quartermaster. So Mrs. Fitzgerald replied that yes, she did learn that from the East, and 12 years she had of it with her old man. What does it mean? She's talking about her husband rising to be lieutenant quartermaster. So that's the title. He learned a lot. Now she's saying that her husband learned a lot the art of the fortune telling, and I learned a lot more. So what does she mean that she learned art of fortune telling better than her husband? But will you make up your mind now, Mrs. Pearson, dear? Put your foot down. Put your foot down means now you have to take decision. So this is another kind of like frequently used word in England. To put foot down, that means to start something. Okay, so basically, Mrs. Fitzgerald is asking Mrs. Pearson to make up her mind and start what she was suggesting once and for all. Then another word is quite used in England, once and for all. That means like do it now, one time for all means, and that will be all, that will be for ever, and be mistress of your own house and the boss of your own family. So she has been basically convincing Mrs. Pearson to take a strong decision, a step to become a boss of her own family in that house. Because earlier in the beginning, I did mention that the mother, the lady, Mrs. Pearson, was ignored by her family, by her husband, by her daughter, by her son. So they took her for granted. All her efforts, they took it for granted. Mrs. Pearson is smiling apologetically. That's easier said than done. Besides, I'm so fond of them, even if they are so thoughtless and selfish. They don't mean to be. Obviously, she is talking about her own family. So how could she be so rude and take like a very very tough uh, step or decision? So now she's trying to tell the fortune teller that it's easy to say, but apart from that, she also loves her family, even if they are thoughtless and selfish. Mrs. Fitzgerald now says, she just interrupted. So, cutting interrupt there. Maybe not, but it would be better for them if they learn to treat you properly. So she, whatever Mrs. Pearson was saying, so she cuts in there and says that no, maybe not, but it would be better for them if they learn to treat Mrs. Pearson in proper way. So again, Mrs. Pearson replies on that, yes, I suppose it would, in a way. Mrs. Fitzgerald, no doubt about it at all. Who's the better for being spoilt, grown man, lad or girl? Nobody. You think it does them good when you run after them all the time, take their orders as if you were the servant in the house, stay at home every night while they go out enjoying themselves. So, Mrs. Fitzgerald, the fortune teller, is trying to tell Mrs. Pearson that by listening to them, she is basically spoiling all of them. She is basically spoiling the grown man, and grown man means she's talking about Mr. Pearson, lad, the son, and the girl. You think it does them good when you run after them all the time. So she is referring that because, excuse me, she's asking Mrs. Pearson. That's all for today, and don't forget to watch the next part of this video. And if there's any problem or anything which you did not understand, you can always take picture of that line or paragraph and send it to me on my WhatsApp number, and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day ahead. Bye bye.